Hi, everyone. We are back with our final speaker of the day, Maile Alau, and she is coming to us from Oahu. Thank you. Um, and we're so excited to have her. So, Maile, take it away.
All right. Aloha, everyone. Welcome to my session, The Net That Holds Us, Pilina and Resilience. Before we get started, I know many of you have probably been here all day and listening in all day, and I hope that it's been as exciting for you as it has been for me for the things that I've watched. But let's just take a moment to arrive, to be here in this moment. During this session, I'm going to ask you to reflect on and think about the deepest and most important relationships in your life, and how those relationships sustain you in your most challenging times. So, as easy as it is to look away from the presentation or check your phone or the laundry or get dinner started, I'm going to ask you to stay present with me. So let's take a deep breath through our nose and then slowly release it. One more, in through the nose and then slowly release. One more time, in through the nose and slowly release. So arriving, being present, um, connecting to your own pilina, connecting with yourself and why you're here today. Okay. Mahalo. Thank you for that moment. Let's get started. So I know the burning question most of you probably have, for those of you who don't speak Hawaiian and are not familiar with the Hawaiian language, I'm sure you're dying to know what pilina is. Uh, um, and we'll dive deeper into that definition in just a moment. For the moment, though, let's just think about it as connection. Pilina is connection, right? And remember that resilience really begins in relationship. So I want to tell you a little bit about the picture that you see on the screen. So where it looks like people are sort of standing out in the ocean, that's actually a wall that people are standing on, and that wall creates what we call a fish pond in Hawaii. So fish ponds were created in ancient times. If you think about looking at an island sort of from the top down, fish ponds would have sort of formed like a little, almost a lace around the edge of our islands, and what they did was create a place where people could go and get fish without having to go fishing. They didn't have to go out into the ocean. So in times of bad weather or things like that, there was always a plentiful supply of fish. And what would happen is the little fish would swim in through the gates that they have in this wall. Each wall had gates in it, and they'd swim in, and the fish ponds were built places where there were lots of good food sources. So the fish would come and they would eat and they would get fat, and then they couldn't get out back through the holes in the gate. So that's a fish pond. So what's happening in this photo? It's this is a fish pond that's located in Kaneohe, on the island of Oahu. If you're familiar with Hawaii, it's called Pai Pai Ohe'ia. And Pai Pai has been restoring their fish pond for many, many years. And this was an event that happened because years before this picture was taken, there was a big storm, and the storm surge took out a section of the wall. It just destroyed it. And it was such a big section that the people who work at Pai Pai knew that they couldn't fix it themselves. So they had an event. They called it Pani Kapuka. So Pani means to close, and then Puka is a hole. So we are inviting people to come and close this hole. Uh, and so they just put it out on social media, and they, did a little bit of advertising about it, but they figured, maybe a couple hundred people would show up and help, and, and spend time at the fish pond. 1,500 people showed up for Pani Kapuka. And some of these people just were people who lived in the neighborhood. Maybe they had been to Pai Pai on a vacation once as kids. Um, Maybe they'd heard about it on the news and thought it was a really cool way to be invested in community. I'm not sure why they were there, but the governor of Hawaii showed up, a whole bunch of legislators showed up, and 1,500 people who came to Panikapuka. So why? Why did these folks show up? My belief is that they showed up because of Pilina. because they felt connected. And in our modern times, it's very easy to feel the challenges of lack of connection, right? We've got this sort of rising disconnection, lots of cultural fragmentation, and real strong need for belonging, right, and purpose. And we have this shared experience of disconnection, and why. And there are lots of people talking about it. I'm not the only one, and while Pilina is a very Hawaiian way of looking at it, lots of people are talking about connection. But why? Why does this topic matter now? The science tells us that the rate of loneliness among young adults has risen every single year from 1976 to 2019. And in our modern life, so many of us are stretched thin. As women, we're moms, we're sisters, we're aunties, we're cousins, we're caretakers, we're workers, we're employees, we're bosses. All of these things have us stretched thin. And modern technology connects us for sure, but it can really leave us lonelier, right? And there's a variety of technologies that have quickly and dramatically changed the way we live, the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we socialize, social media, remote work, virtual reality, even texting, right? All of those things. And this tech is pervasive and has evolved rapidly, so much so that we don't really know the true impact that it can have on our relationships. And technology often will displace personal engagement. It'll monopolize our time and our attention. Just think back, when's the last time that you sat there and found yourself on your phone while you're having a conversation, or when you're trying to talk to your kids and you're on your phone? It just happens, right? And tech can even diminish our self-esteem. So, and this is not to say the technology is bad at all, but we do find ourselves in a world where we are looking for that belonging and purpose, and we're not necessarily going to find that belonging and purpose in this, right? Um, Pilina really reminds us that we are meant to belong to each other, to Aina, which is the Hawaiian word for land, to our communities. We are designed to belong. So now you're like, Maile, what is Pilina? Are you going to tell us, or is it a big surprise? So unsurprisingly, Pilina is the Hawaiian concept of relationship and connection, and it really transcends traditional Western concepts of relationship. Pilina is deep, it is reciprocal, it is rooted in aloha, and it's really vital to our growth and resilience. Um, Pilina is rooted in a distinctly Hawaiian worldview, right? We are not separate. We are part of a living network. Um, and that means that connection means that we're connected to people, we're connected to Aina, to land, we're connected to community, spirit, ancestors, all of those things are interwoven. And in Hawaiian thought, everything exists in relationship, everything. Um, Pilina isn't just people we know. It's how we care for those relationships. It's how we invest in those relationships. And when I say Pilina, I'm not talking about how many people do you know, how many people are your followers, those kinds of things. I'm talking about those reciprocal relationships where you invest in each other regularly. Pilina is welcoming, it is accepting, it is warm, it is valuing people. Everything in Hawaiian thought exists in relationship to people, to Aina, to ancestors, to spirit, to God, if that's the way you think of it. All of those things are important, valuable, and deep. So I say all of this because, you know, the science tells us that pilina is important. Modern science affirms ancient wisdom when it comes to connection. So there's a lot of bad stuff around what disconnection is doing to us. In 2023, the National Institutes of Health released an 83 pages health advisory called Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. Now, a health advisory from the National Institutes of Health, which I will call NIH, is a public statement that calls the American people's attention to an urgent public health issue, and provides information and recommendations on how to address that issue. Advisors are really reserved for significant public health challenges. Think about COVID. There was an advisory for that. And that challenge requires the entire nation's focus on awareness and action. So, and the science is telling us that our lack of social connection and loneliness is literally shortening our lives. Now, the NIH, I'm going to throw some definitions at you. The NIH defines loneliness as a subjective, distressing experience that results from perceived isolation or inadequate, meaningful connections, where inadequate refers to the discrepancy or unmet need between an individual's preferred and actual experience. That's a lot of words to basically say we feel lonely when we feel like we should be having more connection with people than we're having. And loneliness is different for everyone, right? So one person might feel just fine not talking to people for days, whereas another person, like me, might feel lonely if they go a whole day without social connection. And as for social isolation, one more definition, the NIH defines it as objectively having few social relationships, social roles, groups, group memberships, and infrequent social contact. So unlike loneliness, which is subjective, the NIH sees social isolation as an objective measure because you can count the number of relationships you have and how you have them, like whether it's a book club or your friends from high school or a sports club, whatever it is, right? So all of this to say, the NIH measured loneliness and social isolation. And this is what they found. Loneliness increases risk of premature death by 26%. Social isolation increases risk of premature death by 29%. Insufficient social connection is connected to a 29% increase in heart disease and a 32% increase in risk of stroke. And this is not to mention the risk of anxiety and depression, dementia. All of this can be connected to loneliness and social isolation. Now, because we are humans and we like a good statistic a headline to help us wrap our heads around things, this graph from the NIH really tells the story. Lacking social connection is as dangerous as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. More harmful than 6 drinks a day, more harmful than a sedentary lifestyle and obesity, and more harmful than air pollution. And yet, there are social campaigns and media campaigns about stop smoking and get outside and exercise and don't drink and all of those things. I have not yet seen a media campaign on increase your pilina, make more friends, connect with people, right? So that's the bad. There's some good. Of course, there's great around pilina and what that means. And I think what this statistic echoes what many of us feel in Hawaiian, we call it our na'au, our gut, right? That same report from the NIH noted in a synthesis of 148 studies over the course that followed people over 7.5 years, the data shows that social connection increases the odds of survival by 50%. Now, this is not a surprise, right? If you think back to prehistoric times, living in community was the way to survive. You could pool resources. It protected you from the errant saber-toothed tiger that was coming after you. So all of those things were important, right? And now, of course, we don't have the errant saber-toothed tiger, but still community survival is hardwired into us. Connection for survival is hardwired into us. So back in 2019, I lost both my parents in 2019. My father first and then my mother. And my mother wound up in the hospital for 3 weeks before she passed away. And as she was getting ready to leave the hospital, we had to find her a rehab center. Now, my mother lives on Maui, which is a completely separate island from me. And although I have 6 brothers and sisters, the only one who could really travel back and forth was me. So while she was in the hospital, every weekend I was flying to Maui to spend time with her. And the last weekend that she was getting ready to release and the hospital was helping us look for a rehab hospital for her, I finally had a chance to talk to her hospitalist, the person who was there daily with her in the hospital. And he said, "Oh, where are you looking?" And I said, "Well, we're looking at Maui Hospital." And he said, "Oh, and who's going to be here?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, who's going to be with her in the hospital every day to see her?" And I said, "Oh, well, we all live on Oahu, so I'll only be here on weekends." And he said, "Oh, no, you have to take her back to Maui, back to Oahu. She has to be on Oahu where you guys can see her." And I was like, "Why?" And he said, if you're not there to support her through her recovery, she's never going to make it. She's never going to make it. And so what he said to me is supported by the science, right? The science says that the involvement and support of family members has repeatedly been shown to improve disease management and the health of people with things like type 1 or type 2 diabetes, recovering from hospitalization. Social connection can reduce chronic disease, it can improve stress response, it can lower the risk of mental illness. The list really goes on and on. Human brains release calming hormones when we feel supported. Connection literally helps us heal, right? So how do we do it? A lot of times we find ourselves having connection in action, in community, and we connect to each other. So the picture that you're looking at on the screen right now, those of you who've been in Hawaii have probably seen this. Um, it's an imu. So an imu is an underground oven, and it was used in ancient times to cook food. We still use it to this day. We use it mostly for celebrations, for a luau, as you guys would probably know, familiar with. Um, but in this particular picture, my classmates and I graduated from Kamehameha schools. Yes, we've been in the news. Yes, they're suing us. Let's not talk about it. But my classmates and I were partnering with a church to do a big fundraiser where we would cook all the food in the imu, and then the church would get part of the proceeds, and we would get part of the proceeds, and we all work together. So what's going on here is this connection in action, right? There are people on the picture who know each other very well. There are people there that we didn't know at all because they were from the church. But they dug the imu together, they prepped all of the fire, they gathered all the materials to make it burn, they gathered the rocks, everyone, and then they recovered it so it could cook overnight. In the morning, everybody came together to uncover it. Um, and in that time, we built that connection. We talked to each other. We found out about each other's families. So I want you to think about a time that you did community work. Maybe you served a meal at a shelter, or you built a house with Habitat for Humanity, or you went to work in your community garden. And maybe you did it by yourself, or maybe you and some friends went and did it. But one of the things that you can think about when you're there, especially like, let's say you're building a house for Habitat, you're working shoulder to shoulder with somebody doing work that you've never done before. And the next thing you know, you start talking. Where are you from? What do you do? What about your kids? And you start to build that pilina, right? Work immediately begins building connections. Action builds connections. And one thing that pilina shows us, and we know deeply, no matter where we're from, is that when we stand together, we remember our strength. So no matter if you're doing it one time or many times, connection happens in action. So the question for you is, when's the last time you allowed your connections to happen in action? When's the last time you did something with your community? So that's pilina, right? Pilina, connection, deep, solid connections built from a lot of different places. But so what about resilience? Let's talk a little bit about resilience. Um, I want to, so the picture that you see on the screen, this is one of my favorite plants in Hawaii. This is an ohia lehua. It can be found all over the Hawaiian Islands. The one that you're looking at is actually in a lava field on Hawaii Island, on the big island of Hawaii. Um, and I took this picture because I love ohia anyway. But it also reminded me of resilience. Um, so the thing about the ohia lehua is that I'm going to get a little geeky on you. The scientific name for ohia lehua is Metrosideus polymorphi. Polymorphi means many forms, right? So Ohia lehua grows everywhere, and depending on where it grows, it will adapt to that environment. So here in on the lava fields, it looks a little dry and kind of a little scraggly, and the leaves look really thick, like almost like a succulent. But if you find it in the forest, in a rainforest, it's very tall, beautiful tree, still has the same leaves and the same flowers. Those never change, but it's in a different form. It also grows in swampy areas, and sometimes in those swampy areas, it's like a bush. It's really small, still same big beautiful flowers, right? Um, and it is also one of the first plants to grow after lava flows through an area. So lava destroys everything, and ohia has adapted to grow. So with that, all of that is to say that true resilience isn't necessarily toughness, which is how we tend to define it. Um, it's adaptability with integrity, like a tree, right? Bending in the wind. We stay rooted and flexible. And that's, to me, that's the important part of resilience. Um, so just like the ohia, resilience isn't about bouncing back, right? Or getting back up when you're knocked down. It's about adapting. It's about bending. And bending under the force of the wind and the rain, and then having the strength to stand back up. And some of that strength comes from the people around you, because when you bend, they're like, oh, I'm going to catch you and push you back up. And I bring this up because sometimes when we hear the word resilience, we think about bouncing back, right? Like a rubber ball, right? Just boing, and we're back. But that's really not it. Because I don't know if you've ever seen a rubber ball in really cold environments. It doesn't actually bounce back. It breaks. I lived in Alaska as a child, and I saw some very, very cold environments. I think one day I woke up and they said the high for the day was negative 56. Uh, but very cold temperatures, um, rubber contracts, and all of its molecules become a little less flexible and they lose elasticity. And if the temperature is extremely low, that rubber can be brittle and even shatter. Same thing with air-filled rubber balls. The internal air pressure decreases, further reducing the bounce, all that kind of stuff. So my point is, in really difficult times, if we're trying to bounce back, we may actually break. Resilience isn't about toughness. Resilience is about adaptability and rootedness. And that rootedness comes with beauty. There are all different kinds of ways to think about resilience. I like to talk about it from an elements. There's all sorts of things. It's not just healing and rootedness, right? There's energy, right? So healthy consumption, physical activity, boundaries, sleep, all those kinds of things. But if you look at each of these areas, energy, future focus, inner drive, flexible thinking, strong relationships, if you look at all of those, they're all better if you add pilina, right? Um, energy, it's easier to take care of yourself, to eat better and exercise if you have an accountability partner, pilina. Future focus, it's easier to set goals and hold yourself accountable if someone is supporting you, pilina. Inner drive, self-motivation, and belief are made more believable when you sort of have a cheerleader in your corner, pilina. And flexible thinking is made easier and better when you surround yourself with people who help to keep you open-minded and help you think about things in different ways, pilina. So all of this is to say that when it comes to strong relationships, that pilina that has been built over time is what holds that resilience all together. To me, it is the foundation of all those other things, right? Especially when purpose and care are shared, right? When you're working with each other. So I want to talk a little bit about how I got to this place of pilina and resilience. In 2024, so last year, my life kind of fell apart. I had to walk away from my third marriage for a variety of reasons, not the least of which was my own safety. But also, I had kind of lost myself in a polyamorous relationship where my partners treated me like an outsider, despite the fact that I was married to one of them. And what I didn't realize then, and really I'm only now I'm coming to terms with, is that actually treated badly. My partners were drinking and using drugs, and that sort of became the fourth person in our relationship. And it was already hard enough with three people that you add the fourth element of addiction, and it truly became impossible for me. And when my husband, who had always been a happy, fun drunk, came home one night angry, and drunk, angry, and downright mean, I knew I had to leave. Um, and this man was the one. I mean, clearly, I am aggressively optimistic because I believed in marriage three times. But this man spent 2 years convincing me to marry him. He won over my parents. We all know how difficult that can be. My sister, who was extremely skeptical after my first two marriages, and my best friend. And we all know how hard that is. He was the one. He was the one. And in a space of just over 2 years, he shut me out, shut me down, and made me feel lonely and alone and ignored. And so I broke my own heart and I left. A few months later, I got fired from my job. And it was a job that I liked. I didn't love it, but I did love the people that I worked with. And they were phenomenal. And not only was I fired, but I was walked out of the building like a criminal without even an option to say goodbye to the family that I had built over the last 4 years, the friendships that I had cultivated for 4 years. So to say I was devastated was an understatement. So here I am, moved out of the house I shared with my partners into a tiny apartment with my cat, trying to figure out what to do with my life, navigating this whole unemployment system, not to mention therapy, trying to stay hydrated, meditate, work out, eat healthy, figure out what it meant to be alone. And as it turns out, I really wasn't, because my tribe, the relationships that I had cultivated and I had been cultivating for over 30 years, showed up in droves. They called, they took me to lunch, they sat with me while I cried, they gave me jobs. Uh, so I didn't break. I held on to my net, that net that I built because Pilina had always been my foundation, even when I didn't know what to call it. These were men and women who I had invested in, showing up in ways, big ways and small ways, to make sure that they navigated the storms of their lives. And sometimes that meant holding space when they needed to vent. Sometimes it was paying for dinner. Sometimes it was just a text at the right time when they needed it. Sometimes it was things like holding their hand while they let a loved one die. And now here they were, showing up for me with aloha and treats to brighten my day, and hugs and silly memes and videos and a lot of screw that guy, you're amazing. So all of those things. And every day I got better and stronger. And what it reminded me is that iholomua kako, let us move forward together. Resilience is rarely a solo act. Resilience is something that we do together and in community. So where do Pilina and resilience meet? How does that happen? Um, to me, this is the cycle, and Pilina is what holds it all together. Um, because people showed up for me in my hardest moments, I had hope. Hope for continued connection despite the end of my marriage and my job. Hope that I could do this, and that I could be on my own and be okay. And because I had hope, I grew stronger every day. Um, Connection reduces fear and it fuels courage. That's what it does. And we feel seen and supported. We can endure and even transform in hardship. So I want you to think about the last time that you had coffee with a friend, or dinner with a girlfriend, or dinner with connected with somebody that you really care about. Like, and it doesn't matter if it was just standing in the parking lot by your car, laughing and talking, or a quick connect over coffee, or even a Zoom call. Remember how that felt to feel invested in that pilina, and how great you felt afterwards. That's this cycle in play. Pilina, hope, strength, growth. That's the cycle. And there are, and as we're growing our Pilina, as we're really investing in it, this sort of has three different areas. My slide is a little cut off, but that is okay. And they are this. You start with connection to self, right? So reflection, values, inner grounding. And this is different for everyone. I am not going to tell you how to connect with yourself. Some people do it through meditation. Some people do it through journaling. Some people do it through the physical. They work out and that's how they find their connection and their peace. Some people do art. Some people do music. It doesn't matter. But do find a way to connect with yourself, connect with your own Pilina. I recently was sitting with a friend of mine who's a coach and also really talks a lot about Pilina. So here in Hawaii, and we're sitting there talking story, and I was telling him my story about how I made the connection between Pilina and resilience. And he stopped me for a moment. He's like, how's your Pilina with you? How's your Pilina with yourself? And I had to think about that for a moment. No one had ever asked me. I was like, you know what? I think it's pretty great. I think it's good. And he said, well, how does that feel? And I said, it feels like freedom. If you're connected and grounded in yourself, that's the first step. Because then you have the freedom within yourself, within your mind and your body and your heart and your soul to connect with others. Trust, reciprocity, shared care, all of those things, right? Because that connection, and it happens whatever way happens for you and your relationships. I have friends who I went to college with who I don't speak to for months at a time, sometimes even years. And yet, when we get back together, we just pick up where we left off. Pilina, right? That's it. That's Pilina in action, right? You spent time investing in those relationships. That Pilina doesn't go away just because you don't talk to each other. So remember that, right? Connection to others isn't time bound. Pilina is not time bound. Pilina doesn't just happen because I see you every day. I may see you every month. I may see you every year. I may see you every 5 years. But Pilina, once you've grown it, it's there. It has its own light and it stays. In Hawaii, we call it pa, stuck, right? And then the last one that's cut off the screen here is connection to place. In Hawaii, we call it aina. That's a Hawaiian word for land. So, but your relationship with your place, your aina, your community. Now, this looks different for everyone. In Hawaii, it's really easy, right? I feel very connected to aina as a Native Hawaiian woman. So lots of it's relatively easy. But how that looks for you might be different. Like your connection to place might be spending time at your local library. It might look like finding your favorite hiking trails in your area. It might look like finding the best coffee shop on your block and spending time there so that everybody walks in and they know who you are. That's connection to place, right? So when we grew up, I was a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force, and we moved a lot, right? We lived. I mentioned we lived in Alaska for 5 years. We lived in Virginia for 3 years, and then we moved back to Hawaii. And I didn't realize it at the time, but my dad was really, really great at grounding us in a sense of place. When we lived in Alaska, we learned how to ski. We went fishing. We went to learn about the salmon runs. We went camping. We were really connected to that place, and that was Dad's doing, right? Like we went ice skating at night in in the winter and all of those things. That was Dad who did that. And then we moved to Virginia and he did the same thing. He made sure that we lived in a community that was multicultural, which was unusual at the time in the early 70s. Um, he was very clear that we needed to go to school with people that we cared about and make those connections. So they really fostered that. And when we moved back to Hawaii, it would have been very easy for us to live on base or on post, and probably less expensive. But my dad made a conscious decision to move us into community. And then we went to school in that community, and we grew up in that community, and we made friends in that community. So staying connected to place was something he was very intentional, and you can be too. The point of all this is that you need all three, right? Self-awareness that extends to people, and then root in the land or the community that sustains you. So you have to practice it, right? You have to practice. Pilina doesn't just happen. So there's a few things that you can do. Um, Daily check-ins with yourself and or loved ones. Uh, Small, consistent acts build Pilina and resilience, right? Small, it doesn't have to be big things. You don't have to be like going out to a fancy dinner with friends every week. Small, consistent acts. um, Gratitude and reciprocity, right? No one is going to ever say to you, oh, please don't appreciate me. Don't appreciate me as much as you do. And it's amazing what a small, I appreciate you. It will change your relationships. Just say, I appreciate you. Even more than thank you. Thank you for opening and closing a door is one thing. But when you truly look somebody in the face, alo ahe alo is what we say in Hawaiian, face to face, and say, I appreciate you, it changes things, right? So that's reciprocity. Uh, Spend time in Aina if you can. So it is, you would be amazed what it can do to you to put your hands in the dirt, right? And if you could spend time in Aina with other people. Now, for me, that might be working in a taro field or working on my family's property. For you, that might look different. Growing a garden, helping your mom with her garden, helping a community with their garden, joining a work trip with a nonprofit organization that works on Aina. Spend time in Aina. Spend time in the land. And then finally, rituals of connection, and that's storytelling, shared meals, service, all of those things. Uh, it's really interesting to me that one of the things that's happened over time with me is that some of the rituals that we've had in our family for years are starting to fall away. My mother's mom lived in Redding, California, and her house was the gathering place for us. Like that was, we all went there. We all had birthdays there, Thanksgiving's there, Christmas, Easter. Um, all of those things happen at Grammy's house. We called her Grammy. Um, when Grammy's house was no longer part of our family, it was really hard to reimagine those rituals. Because here's the thing, those gatherings, those rituals, are you investing in Pilina with your family, with your ohana, right? That's what that is. And we've known this, right? Gathering for holidays, gathering for harvesting, gathering for celebration of life, right? All of those things we have known since ancient times that gathering is important. It's ritual, it's Pilina building. And if that's falling away in your family, I'm wondering if you can think about how do we reestablish that in service of Pilina, right? Which means it might look different. Like maybe your Thanksgiving becomes Friendsgiving and everybody comes over and everybody shares the burden of making food and it's not just all on mom. You know, I'm not asking you to go back to the days where mom, wife exhausted herself making this beautiful meal and then everybody else just sat around and did nothing. Absolutely not. But how does that ritual, where is it missing in your life? And where can you intentionally reinvest in it? So I'd like you to think about that. Yeah, write it down. Talk to your family about it. Like, what do we want? Intentionally, what do we want to do in order to be able to continually invest in the Pilina of our Ohana? And I use Ohana purposefully because Ohana is not just our family, brothers, sisters, grandmother, grandfather, maybe cousins, right? Ohana is that. There's also those you choose to call family, right? It's not just your family, it's those you choose to call family. Anybody who has been to Hawaii knows that instead of Mr. and Mrs. in Hawaii or Ms., everybody calls everybody else auntie or uncle. So I have been Auntie Maile since I was like 23. Because we're looking for choosing ohana, people we choose to call family. Relationship is so deep in the DNA of Hawaii that we're not going to put you at a distance and call you Mr. and Mrs. We're going to say, aole, no, come closer, auntie, uncle. Even the older women and men who ride the bus, because I ride the bus a lot, we refer to them as tutu, which is an honorific for an older person. Oh, tutu, sit down, on the bus. Doesn't matter. She is not my grandmother or my grandfather, but I'm still going to call them that because, Helena, relationship is important. All right. we're coming to the end of our time together, and I want to just make a couple more thoughts around Pilina and why it's important. You know, relationships are like a lei, right? They're woven together. And in this picture, this is a tea leaf lei that has actually been twisted and woven together from leaves of a plant. Whether you think of Pilina as a net that holds us or as the many strands of a lei, our lives are interwoven. We belong in relationship. We're built to be in relationship. Um, when one strand weakens, the others hold, right? Think about a fraying rope, right? A piece of rope can hang on for a long time because even as it starts to fray, there's still lots of it holding it together, right? That's what Pilina is, and that resilience is the strength of the whole weave. It's all of that together holding us up when we maybe can't hold ourselves up very well. Maybe when we're just holding on by a thread. Yeah. I love this particular olelo noeau in Hawaiian. An olelo noeau is a wise saying. So this one is iulu no ka lala ikekumu. The branches grow because of the trunk, and that trunk is Pilina, right? If you think about the stories that I've told you today about how we relate to each other, you know, Pai Pai Ohe continues to exist and work continues to be done there because of Pilina and community. We continue to do fundraisers with my classmates because of Pilina and community. Um, I continue to grow and heal because of my Pilina. I am resilient because of my Pilina. Um, Resilience flows from connection to our ancestors, to each other, to place. And I really invite you to reflect on your own sources of Pilina. Where does that show up in your life? Where are you investing in Pilina? And how are you doing it? And are you being intentional about it? So I want to thank you so much for spending the last 42 minutes and 30 seconds with me. So mahalo, mahalo, mahalo. Thank you. Um, I just I love this particular Olelo Noel. No kai kapilikilia paua pau. When one is in trouble, all give aid. And that is the way that we live. That is the way that we should live, right? When one person is in trouble, we all give aid. And when we nurture pilina with ourselves, with each other, with aina, we don't just survive, we thrive. We grow stronger. Um, so thank you. Thank you for joining. My name is Maile Alau, uh, and I really appreciate your time and attention today. Uh, Remember that connection is the path and the practice that leads to our resilience. So mahalo. Have a wonderful evening for those of you who are on the continent. It's only noon here, or almost 1 o'clock. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to hearing any questions after this is done. So aloha.
We're back.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Mahalo.
Thank you. I wish, I don't think that we have, how do I say this? I wish that people here on the continent believed in family and in connection as much as the Hawaiian people do, because I think it's something that we talked about this prior to going on air about the feeling that you get when you're in Hawaii and the power and the connection that you make with people when you're there, and how you're invited in. You're invited
Yes.
into the culture and your family, and it's not so much that way here. And I think maybe that's why I love Hawaii so much. But if everyone could hear, I hope everyone can hear what you're saying, and everyone can see your message and your and your delivery, because there's such connection there. I think that your energy and your words and your who you are is just bringing people together. So I think that's really powerful. And
Mahalo.
thank you so much for being here and doing this, bringing us together in your energy and in your island and your space. I mean, it's so beautiful. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. This is wonderful. I'm so glad I was able to be here.
I'm so glad you were too. All right, we are done for the day. Stay with me, Maile.
Okay.
We're done for the day. We are going to have our panel here in about 10 minutes. We'll be back. Today, our panel is Under Siege, Femicide, Violence, and the Global War on Women. Very important topic to talk about, but we'll be back, so stay tuned.